It must be stated from the onset that I am not a Lewis scholar in the traditional sense. I did not do any formal academic study on him or his works in my studies along the way to being an academic or be ordained in the Church of Ireland. However, as it is most likely the case for many in the room and beyond, Lewis is an influential voice in our understanding of the Christian faith, for better or for worse. What can be said is that his work shaped the way that I encounter other writers, stories, philosophies, and theology, and the long and winding road to the current tense. It is from this periphery that I have any room to speak at all. As in the introduction, I'm a recovering musical artist, a fledgling academic, and on my best and worst day, a minister in Christ's church manifest in the Anglican tradition on the island of Ireland. So what will follow is not a matter of literary criticism, as it's not my subject or my field, but it is a consideration of a theological reflection in the vein of a typology of literary criticism or questioning towards a theological and hopefully practical engagement where my curiosity and faith as a theologian and minister meets the artistic imagination inspired by Lewis and his stories and possibilities for understanding the last days. So please accept my apologies for taking such liberties. In fact, Lewis did not inspire this paper first and foremost. There was a spark that drew me back into the Great Divorce because of the song Dawn Chorus by Radiohead's Tom York, which reminded me of the fateful bus journey and the sub-stories presented by the folks who visited that heavenly place. Tom York sings, "If you could do it all again, a little fairy dust, 1,000 tiny birds singing, if you must, you must. Please let me know when you've had enough of the white light, of the dawn chorus. If you could do it all again, yeah, without a second thought, I think I missed something, but I'm not sure what. It's the dawn chorus. If you could do it all again, big deal. So what? Please let me know when you've had enough. It's the last chance. Okay, chorale. If you could do it all again, but this time with style." It's from here that Lewis's stories, my love of music, and a deep theological longing thought to ask the question of how can Lewis's use of song help consider what the last days look like by looking at the first. Lewis begins an essay on church music by saying, quote, "I'm a layman and one who can boast no musical education." He goes on to describe that church music ought to be used either to edify or glorify God, and makes the careful distinction that they are not the same thing. Quote, "Whenever we edify, we glorify, but when we glorify, we do not always edify." End quote. It is possible to glorify God in a way that does not edify our neighbor. In other words, it sounds like Lewis was highly critical of church music because it has too much possibility to stand in its own way towards the glorification of God, due to taste, skill level, traditional versus contemporary, to robe, to not robe, choir, church organs, and the untrained mass of folks who sing along with the best of intentions, but make what happens agreeable, if not average at best. Lewis says, "What is looked for us in as men is an other kind of glorified, which depends on intention." End quote. We must be aware of the naive idea that our music can please God as it would please a cultivated human hearer. He says, that is like thinking under the old law that he really needed the blood of bulls and goats. If God wanted music, he would not tell us. For all of our offerings, whether music or martyrdom, are like the intrinsically worthless present of a child, which the Father values indeed, but only values for the intention. End quote. See, intentionality requires a type of participation that surrenders the self to the object of our affection, but also does so in a way that is edifying to the whole group gathered to sing. Now, it may seem curious for me to start with a Lewis criticism of music in a paper on Lewis's use of music as a motive of creation and recreation. But the subtle nuance needed here is the reality of intentionality. Lewis's use of music is not one-sided. It is not an upward lift of humanity to God, but a downward song of heaven to earth and an invitation to sing along. In the liberty of paraphrase, the founding of Narnia. In the darkness, something was happening at last. A voice had begun to sing. It was far away. Diggory did not know what direction it was coming from. Perhaps all directions at once, maybe from beneath him too. The low notes deep enough to be the earth itself, no words, hardly a tune. But it was, beyond comparison, the most beautiful noise he had ever heard. It was so beautiful he could hardly bear it. Then two wonders. One was the voice was suddenly joined by other voices, more than one could possibly count, and they were in harmony with it, but higher up the scale. The second wonder was the blackness overhead. All at once was blazing with stars, not one by one, but thousands upon thousands. One moment darkness, the next stars, constellations, planets brighter and more wondrous than ours, and they were singing. And it was the first voice, the deeper one, which had made them appear and made them sing. The sky turned from white to pink, from pink to gold. The voice rose and rose until the air was shaking with it, and just as it swelled to the mightiest and most glorious sound it had yet produced, the sun arose. The earth was many colors, and they made you feel excited until you saw the singer himself, and you forgot everything else. It was that huge, shaggy, and bright lion, standing facing the sun with its mouth wide open in song. The lion walked in the empty land and was singing this song. Hills, valleys, trees, flowers, everything springing into life. And Polly noticed how the song seemed to be directing the events. Low notes brought the deep woods. Lighter notes brought forth flowers. It all seemed like it was happening in the lion's head. And when you listened to his song, you heard the things that he was making up. Life, animals, expectations, a song. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the water. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. It could be very easily assumed that this creation narrative is in correlation with the biblical account in Genesis. And the straightforward connection is sufficient for our purposes, regardless of the potential larger frameworks presented for and against this view in literary critical circles and potentiality in those other areas. However, it is true that more work is needed to consider this fully. What about Lewis's other works and that of music? In his other works of fiction, like the Ransom trilogy, he offers a glimpse into another aspect of music through absence. The earth is silent because she doesn't join in the singing of the other planets. The leader or the intelligence, the bent one, has nothing to sing and nothing to say. The earth is a dumb silence. The other planets are silent too, but in a different way. Because theirs is a hum that seems perpetual. It's always there, always going. And so there's no distinction between that which is and which isn't, except for that of possibility. But the undercurrent is obedience, design, and desire. Which makes us ask the question, what makes one bent? In Lewis's work, The Pilgrim's Regress, he admits that his obscurity of his own journey from popular realism to philosophical idealism, onward to pantheism, to theism, and finally to Christianity. It's a road that many have traveled, There's nothing current about some of the fashions as they easily shift out of style. He admits he used romanticism in a way that he later laments, but there are still useful pathways on this journey because it is a story of self-realization and self-actualization to the depths of one man's heart and desire. The songs of the guide have deep imagery that accompany John on the journey and serve as signposts to discovery of true self and true desire. But they also speak to the human condition and every soul's journey in consideration of the song or of silence. The guide is quoted. A black hole is blackness enclosed. In other words, it's limited, it's silence. And in that sense, the landlord has made the black hole. He has put it into the world, the worst thing. But evil itself would never reach a worst, for evil is itself vociferous and could never in 1,000 eternities find any way to arrest its own reproduction. If it could, it would no longer be evil. Form and limit belong to the good. The walls of the black hole are the tourniquet on the wound through which the lost soul else would bleed to death she never reached. It's the landlord's last service to those who will let him do nothing better for them. And what follows is the guide sings. Nearly they stood who fall, themselves as they look back. See always in the track the one false step where all, even yet by lightest swerve, a foot not yet enslaved, by smallest tremble of the smallest nerve, might have been saved. And skipping a few stanzas, the guide continues, and further, therefore, O man, have fear, lest oldest fears be true, lest thou too far pursue the road that seems so clear and step secure, a hair's breadth past the hair breadth born, which, being once crossed forever unawares, denies return. This, of course, allows us to reconsider part of the foundation of Narnia alongside another work, The Great Divorce. In the above narration, the participants that have been left out, of course, Jadis and Uncle Andrew, they hate the sound of music. Their distorted faces and quivering bodies lament the sound because they cannot bear that which is good and other. They are so inwardly focused on their own possibility that they relinquish their true possibility and freedom. For Uncle Andrew, we encounter a man who is unable to understand language. He is tone deaf to the reality that has been created. The beasts have no voice to him, but growls. And his thoughts and self-centeredness mean he could very well join Napoleon 10,000 years into the abyss, pacing to and fro, blaming everyone but himself. We later meet Jadis in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe at the moment of deep magic and in foundational law, where she thinks she's conquered Narnia once and for all with the sacrificial death of the lion. Yet, in an end is the beginning moment of resurrection that occurs as a dawn chorus bursts forth into light. Her selfish ego and desire is her end as a risen king defends his creation. Her full rejection of beauty for ashes. See, the Great Divorce humanizes possibilities, participation, and presence for us. And I believe that whether intentional or not, Lewis does this through the anticipatory elements of song. Each life story, each encounter presents every soul with a chance to walk towards the gathering light, the dawn chorus. To move from the doldrums of self-pity, self-importance, self-service, self-desire towards peace and true rest. This work has the most pressing consequences for its readers because in every story, one finds the possibility of finding oneself as the character in every situation. And every situation has a graceful guide, most unexpected as the final barrier to move from self to other. And not only from the other as in humanity, but other as in the Creator. From that which we have created to that which is hard, that which could not fit into the smallest fiber of a silent earth, where the grass hurts one's feet and an apple weighs a ton because of the density of its goodness. Recreation. The end is the beginning. The concept of creating out of nothing and humanity being made in the image of the Creator lend itself to the divine participation of humanity in bellowing out something from nothing in the vibration of air across our vocal cords. A hum becomes a melody. Then when attached to words, give new meaning to life and the role of participation in singing alongside something otherworldly and holy. In Lewis's work, song becomes a manifestation of the heavenly realm and gives a trajectory for our own story of community, joy, and that which is real and felt against the self, the bent ego, and the possibility that lends 10,000 years into isolation and silence, hell itself. In closing, we consider the maestro and his song. You remember, C.S. Lewis says, I am a layman who can boast no musical education. I think perhaps it is very well that hidden in Lewis's work is an appreciation for that which even he could not master. His prose, hiddenness of meanings, and clever use of time, space, history, and imagination are things that have drawn us into his life and his work. He's a brilliant mastermind with a sly grin because he conjured up worlds and ideas that are probably still yet uncovered. This is a beautiful reception of artistic imagination, of what it means to be made in the image of the Creator God and to ourselves create ex nihilo. A lifting of the veil, a thin place, a help on the journey towards understanding the remarkable movement of heaven to earth and earth to heaven, from unconsciousness to enjoyment and contemplation. Yet even more clever is his alluding to possibility, participation, and presence by way of song. If you could do it all again, a little fairy dust, 1,000 tiny birds singing, it's the dawn chorus. Imagine that all of life is presented as a possibility that as we live, we possess infinite possibility, but that this possibility has a design, a use, and a purpose, and that we are granted the choice to participate through our gifted possibility, to be welcomed by the maestro, not merely to observe, as Pauli and Diggory in the creation of the world, but to sit in the orchestra pit with the music in front of you. And we sit with excited anticipation, with creatures, beasts, angels, mountains, streams. And to the podium walks the conductor who crafted the whole piece of music, taps the baton, raises his arms, and the tuning dawn chorus, humming in the distance, becomes the second movement in the symphony, as all ring out their song. Holy, 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 Lord God of hosts, heaven and earth are full of thy glory. Glory be to thee, O Lord Most High.